Carrier, the captain pleading for help.
Vice President and his alarming new words. With the world having seen what happened in Italy, Vice President Pence now saying the White House modeling suggests Italy may be the most comparable area to the U.S. And what President Trump said moments ago. Tonight, news from the hotspots emerging across this country, Michigan, Louisiana, Texas among them. And tonight, after weeks of resisting, Florida, now weeks into this, imposing stay-at-home restrictions. And the scene in California tonight, the pleas for help from the front lines. We also have new reporting coming in, ABC News obtaining the orders given to public and private EMS services in the New York City area. The paramedics answering these calls, and now an acknowledgement that near-death patients might not be able to be saved, with city hospitals overrun with coronavirus. What the guidelines now say for these crews on the front lines. Across the country tonight, the doctors who say even basic antibiotics are difficult to get. Another fearing he will have to deny ventilators to patients who need them. And the patients with pre-existing conditions, compromised immune systems. What one cancer patient says she was told if a choice has to be made. Tonight, the cruise ship headed toward Florida, confirmed cases on board, at least 4 dead, including an American. And officials in Florida saying they don't want the ship to dock there. The dire need on board that U.S. aircraft carrier, cases now climbing to 93, and we have learned of new action tonight. The families across this country and the economic toll. The first of the month, bills due, and tonight the laid-off workers on the line for days trying.
Fibers, which may have caused
to a new benchmark as the White House implores everyone to stay at home for 30 days.
It's a matter of life and death.
But tonight, governors in roughly a dozen states are refusing to issue that mandate, despite growing pressure from doctors who say the order will save millions of lives.
It makes sense to make this move now.
After weeks of resistance, today Florida's governor joined the majority of the country, telling Sunshine State residents to stay home. Sam Brock is in Miami.
Florida has a population of 21.5 million people, about 1 in 5 of whom are 65 years or older. That's the group that's most at risk of losing their life to this virus.
Facing a grim new reality, the White House projects in just weeks, more than 2,200 Americans could die each day from the virus, with up to 240,000 lives lost if every precaution is taken.
Each of our behaviors translating into something that changes the course of this viral pandemic over the next 30 days.
The crisis crippling New York, but spreading quickly across the nation.
To the extent people watch their nightly news in Kansas and say, well, this is a New York problem. That's not what these numbers say. Tomorrow, it's a Kansas problem and a Texas problem and a New Mexico problem.
With the CDC estimating 25% or 1 in 4 coronavirus carriers shows no symptoms, there is growing worry they can blindly infect others. Off the coast of South Florida, government leaders are worried about a wave of new cases. 3 troubled cruise liners loaded with sick passengers
gave the BBC.
Cruise ships held off the coast of Florida, hundreds of sick passengers and crew on board. 4 have died, including an American. Authorities don't want them to dock in Florida. Temporary hospitals going up in Detroit, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, Dallas, parts of California tonight. And of course, as we do every night, we will get to it all and carefully. And the president saying just moments ago, difficult days ahead, a few days from now, are going to be horrific. We begin with ABC's Whit Johnson tonight.
Tonight, a doctor taking us inside New York's Mount Sinai Queens Hospital, now pushed to the brink.
This is our ED. You can see all the rooms are filled. Usually these halls are very neat and empty. And now you can see
hospitals turning into death camps.
There's patients everywhere because of this. Makes it very hard to work, and we're trying our best to treat everyone that we can.
Many of the patients immediately put on oxygen.
All these patients here sitting out in the hallways because we are full.
Healthcare workers on the front lines making painful sacrifices.
I said goodbye to my wife and my daughter for who knows how long. It's going to be several weeks probably before I see them in person again.
It's frustrating that, you want people to get better. Everyone in the hospital is working overtime and putting their hearts out into it, trying to save these people's lives, and It takes a toll because you're both physically and mentally exhausted.
And tonight, news on Dr. Colleen Smith, who shared these images from one of the first hard-hit ERs in Queens.
All the patients in this room, all the feet that you see, they all have COVID.
Now confirming she's tested positive herself for COVID-19. Hospitals so overwhelmed, iconic public spaces now used to treat patients.
This is really an extraordinary moment. You could see that ambulance pulling up and pulling in with the very first COVID-19 patient to be brought here and treated at this field hospital in the middle of Central Park.
This facility has 68 beds. Medical teams and volunteers from Samaritan's Purse stepping up to meet the need.
Some will be transferring who are already ventilated, and so we will then transfer to our ventilators to take care of them.
The death toll in New York State close to 2,000, surging by nearly 400 overnight. One projection showing 16,000 New Yorkers could die. And tonight, word of the youngest known victim, a 6-week-old baby, passing away from complications of the virus in nearby Connecticut.
What we're looking at now is the apex, top of the curve.
For small amounts of his.
She served as a medic in Iraq and says this is worse.
I don't think I was emotionally prepared to witness this in the U.S. Like for going to a war zone.
The vast majority of those who've died have been older with underlying health conditions, but there have been losses of all ages. Des-Anne Romaine was just 36, a well-respected teacher and principal in Brooklyn. New Jersey firefighter Israel Tolentino was 33, the father of young children. Rabbi Romy Cohn of Staten Island resisted the Nazis and survived the Holocaust. Dr. Frank Gabrin worked at ERs in New York and New Jersey.
He went into medicine because he wanted to help people.
His family and friends believe he died because he didn't have enough protective gear.
When the paramedics arrived, he was already stopped breathing.
Gabrin was well known in the medical community, devoting much of his career to helping colleagues avoid burnout, even writing this book.
It's absolutely heartbreaking to have to see the amount of people reaching out and talking about the difference that he made in their lives. I'm sorry. And he's not here to know what he did do mattered.
And right in the middle of typically bustling Manhattan, many hospitals now have this, a refrigerated truck, a temporary morgue. Sobering reminders of the growing emergency. Lester.
All right, Gabe, thank you. On the front lines tonight, fear, heartbreak, and heroism among those treating and comforting the sick and dying while trying to protect themselves and their own families. Stephanie Gosk has their stories.
We are not okay. We are tired and we are scared. If I infect my husband or my 4-year-old daughter, who I haven't hugged or kissed in weeks now, it'll be my fault.
It is a ruthless irony. The health workers who can't get close to their own families.
Even if I don't have symptoms, I could have already had it or I might have it now.
They have had to become family for their patients. Hospitals aren't allowing visitors.
These patients have to die alone. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but it is the truth. Families are having to say goodbye via FaceTime.
Justine Bender is a nurse in Maryland.
We have taken on another role. Family member and friend. We do our best every day to provide for each of our patients based on their needs. But right now, it honestly feels impossible.
I know you're at home, but we are the doctors, the nurses, the housekeeping, the clerks. We are the closest to your family right now, and we're going to take care of them.
Last week, an elderly man walked into North Shore University Hospital.
We were pretty sure he had COVID. He was having trouble breathing. I said to him, what can I do? Who can I call? He said, can you call my wife? And he was too short of breath to talk to her. And I said, what can we tell your wife? You know, and he said, I just want you to tell my wife that I love her and I hope she's okay. And my intern and I walked out of the room and cried outside of the room.
Less than a week later, he died. And then there was the man with dementia and respiratory problems who came to Dr. Matthew Foley's hospital.
The only thing that would calm this person down was stroking his head. Immediately calmed down. So it was the little easy things that made this patient feel better.
I think each one of
I wish now. Of course, there's nothing that I can do about it now. But I wish now that I didn't hesitate that 24-hour period that I seen the first episode on the second week of January pertaining to the disaster that was hitting over in China, because I wanted to be sure. I didn't want to start a panic, because that was the very thing that they was trying to charge me for up here in Martin, Tennessee, in Weakley County, Tennessee. They was trying to say that I was going to try to start a panic in a theater, or not only a theater but a schoolhouse or anywhere that could have been looked upon as a potential terrorist act. That's what these clowns up here in Martin, Tennessee, the Martin PD and the Weakley County authorities was trying to pin on me. And because I'd done already went through that 3-ring circus with law enforcement up here, I was hesitant about following my instincts and doing what I felt like that I should have done towards putting out the message quicker, sooner, that it's coming. God spoke to my heart. He said, Dennis, it's coming. This is going to be the same thing as the Black Plague. And 24 hours later, I put out what I needed to put out to Homeland Security and to Tommy Moore and the various law enforcement agencies around here. And not only was it ignored whenever I first put it out, but it was ignored the second time I put it out, and it was ignored the 5th and 6th, and I guess going all the way up till about maybe the 3rd or 4th week. It was at least a month before people finally started acknowledging, my God, this stuff is really happening. And I think it actually took the statistics coming out of Europe, Italy, France, and other parts of the world before America, various people in America, finally started waking up and realizing this is real. It was long about the time whenever the tornado hit here in Tennessee, and I shot up to Nashville towards trying to help some people out doing some volunteering work with a chainsaw, is whenever a few people around here started acknowledging, towards seeing it again and again and again on TV over in China, that started thinking, maybe there is something to all this after all. If I could have helped to save one life by putting out my message 24 hours earlier, even at the expense of being reprimanded again by the Weakley County authorities, I would have done it. I would have done it. Because that was the way that God was leading me. But because of these clowns up here in Weakley County that was just so dead set, and it wasn't just Weakley County, the whole area, towards trying to make me out to be a terrorist, that's what I was going up against. A group of people that was trying to image me as me being a monster. Was trying to image me as me being the bad guy. And it was actually complicating things that much more worse in my life towards me not being able to be effective in the ministry. And whenever it reaches that boiling point, along with the scam that went on up in Washington, D.C. pertaining to the impeachment inquiry that led into the impeachment hearing that led into the supposedly impeachment trial, now it has put us in a very, very uncomfortable position April the 1st. And guess what? It is not an April Fool's joke. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is the real deal. And I've been telling my viewers ever since that I have been aware of these events that this is not Hollywood, folks. This is the real deal.
One of us breaks down at a different time of day, and just having to be there and not knowing what to say to make it better, because right now it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse.
Absolutely.
Christina Norstein is an intensive care nurse.
I worry about taking this home to my family.
I just imagine what they're doing, they're setting up basically death camps to where there won't be no prognosis, there won't be no recovery. They'll basically just be incapacitating people until they actually die. Basically, not a FEMA, but a hospice camp. And if they don't watch, the very people that they're watching, intending to, will wind up catching it, and they'll wind up being a victim too of the same thing. So it's so sad. It is so sad of how various corrupt officials, not only locally in this area, but statewide as well as federal-wide, is going to have a great deal to be accountable for one day in the hereafter towards allowing for this to get out of hand the way that it has in this magnitude. If I could see it as a regular layman here using my YouTube platform, that I've got it dated, I've got pictures that I've, keep a chart, basically keep a dialogue of everything. If I've got it dated, I know other people out there do too. Because I've been keeping up with all this stuff as well as I could, because I had a gut feeling. that as things was progressing, as I seen not only the attacks upon our lives right here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, but as I was seeing other things evolving all over the world, especially with the impeachment hearing, I knew that God was going to lift his hand of protection, his umbrella of protection, and he was basically going to say, all right, if that's the way you feel about me, if that's how you're going to serve me, if that's how you're going to acknowledge each other towards stabbing each other in the back and screwing each other over and killing all the babies and running up a debt like you've run up, I'll just allow for Satan to do his job. And what is Satan's job according to the book of life? Satan is out to kill, steal, and destroy. And he is the massive author of confusion. And that is exactly what that he is doing right now. People have tried ever so desperately, beginning in Kenton, Tennessee, to try to shun, destroy, eliminate, eradicate the purpose that God gave to me to give to mankind of the end time biblical Bible prophecy days. And this is what it's going to take to finally break the camel's back before we're going to see the fulfillment of biblical Bible prophecy. You keep in mind, these people around here that was older than me and my age and a little younger, people like Tommy Moore, Judge Tommy Moore, people like Tommy Thomas, people like Randy Brundage, the mayor here in Martin, other law enforcement people that's either engaged in a politician of some sort or a preacher, they didn't want peace. They didn't want to declare the first seal of the book of Revelations being opened, because they had been so bamboozled and so deceived that the first seal was a form of the Antichrist. And if there is any breath within my bones that says anything contrary to the Word of God or contrary to the teachings of Jesus, may lightning strike me down dead right now before I get through making this video to put it on my YouTube platform. And that's just it. It's never been, nor now it ever shall be. Because I've always stood for the teachings of Christ. It's these people around here, the pretenders, the actors, the blasphemers, the Jezebels, the reprobates, that had tried so desperately to destroy my purpose. And now puts us where we are, April the 1st, 2020.
What have you done to protect your family?
I left my home. I'm staying at a hotel.
Her daughter is battling lupus. Norstein could be living in a hotel room for weeks. What would you say is the single hardest thing for you over the course of one of these shifts?
Just seeing the sadness.
Where do you see the sadness?
I see it on everybody's face. Everybody who's walking around, they're stunned.
I love my job. I love being a nurse. And now more than ever, we need to come together because we're quite literally fighting for people's lives and for our own lives.
It's incomprehensible. The American people are fixing to walk off into an environment that is absolutely incomprehensible. And the only thing that would be comparison to it would be if a nuclear bomb had been activated. And suddenly, all of a sudden, we was having to pick up hundreds of thousands of bodies that had been charred to death or radiation to death. That would be the only thing that would compare to what we are fixing to have to experience. And you keep in mind, people over in Italy and other parts of the world has done already experienced this. It will play a toll on not only your emotions, but it will play a toll on your psychic. People would literally lose their minds over this type of environment. They will become sick. They will quit eating. They will hear things at night. They won't sleep good. They'll never be involved in another relationship. They will literally be stunned the rest of their lives, providing that they live through this. But there will be people, psychologically speaking, that will be absolutely devastated after going through stuff like this with their family members or with themselves, providing that they live through it. That's how devastating that the plague is. And that's exactly what it is. It's the China plague. It's the Korean plague. We know that it come from over in that area, and I tend to wonder if it wasn't North Korea or South Korea, give or take, with all the love letters back and forth with Donald Trump, and them saying, oh, we got a Christmas present. We got a Christmas present for the Americans. Well, you sure do. And now we're receiving it. Because I've stopped and I've asked myself the question, how come a place like South Korea has basically become unscathed? And everybody wanted to brag about, oh, well, they was on top of their game and they had all their test equipment and they done this right and they done that right. Has anybody ever thought that maybe it was South Korea or North Korea that actually knowed that this thing was fixing to be unleashed into society because it was done intentionally? Has anybody ever thought that through? That this was a terrorist random war act? This is an act of war. If we find out that this was done intentionally, this is an act of war. Just like the Saudis right now, going to war of all times with the Russians about the oil typhoons, dropping the oil. Well, they claim, well, we're doing it for the citizens. How are you doing it for the citizens when probably a third of society on the planet is under lockdown? You're not doing it for the benefit of the citizens. You're doing it to bankrupt Valdez, Exxon, Shell, Devon, Chesapeake, other major oil-producing companies, not just here in America, but all over the world. They're adding insult to misery. They're not trying to help us. They're trying to hurt us. And the American people can't see that. For some reason, the American people can't understand. We have an enemy that is out to kill, steal, and destroy. That wants to take us out. That wants to disseminate us off the planet.
Appreciate the public support. They need more help, and they hope someone is listening. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
So tough. We ask so much of them. And as doctors and nurses fight this battle, there is even more urgent alarm tonight about what's really left in the national stockpile of life-saving equipment and supplies, and questions about why governors are apparently forced to compete with each other and the federal government to buy what they desperately need. Here's Jeff Bennett.
Tonight, with the demand for emergency supplies surging, the federal government's reserves are running thin. The Washington Post reporting the national stockpile of personal protective equipment is nearly empty, despite assurances from the White House. The U.S. stock.
And this thing is just now beginning. Before it's over with, people will be left with nothing to fight this with other than their faith in Christ, as they sit and hold the hands of people who are dying in groves. In groves. Because there won't be respirators. There won't be hospital care. People will be dying like flies, the same way as other pandemics have happened pertaining to this China plague, this Korean plague that is now haunting the planet. This demon that has been unleashed onto society.
Depleted of PPE. Is that the case? If so, how many?
It is, because we're sending it directly to hospitals. We don't want it to come to the stockpile because then we have to take it after it arrives and bring it to various states and hospitals.
The scramble to purchase supplies to deal with the cascading coronavirus crisis has some state governors raising red flags.
It's just a madhouse out there.
They're calling for a more coordinated response from the Trump administration and an end to the current patchwork approach.
Either people are over-promising or we get outbid at the last moment. Often by the feds, by the way.
So you have 50 states competing to buy the same item. It's like being on eBay with 50 other states bidding on a ventilator.
Just like an auction. And naturally, who's the seller going to sell to? The highest bidder. People that take advantage of situations like this, I don't care if they're selling a bag of ice, that they should sell it for $4 or $5 a bag, a big 20-pound bag of ice, but they're trying to get $20 a bag, are people selling ventilators. People that are taking advantage of this situation towards profiteering need to go to jail. There will be a special place in hell for people that are taking advantage of this situation right now. It wouldn't be no different if you was down in Florida and a hurricane was coming and you had sheets of plywood that should be selling for $25 a sheet, but you're getting $125 a sheet.
A little over a week ago, we made an $18 million purchase on PPE equipment and things for our first responders and for our hospital personnel out there. As of today, that same order will cost you now over $30 million.
It's not just governors calling for clarity, but suppliers too. The CEO of a New Jersey-based clothing company that's now making face masks says the entire system is decentralized and disorganized, making it hard to get gear to those who need it.
There's questions about who's making the decision, who's buying it, and there isn't really one entity that can then make a purchase, for example, for a state and distribute that across everybody that needs it.
And state officials are still sounding the alarm about test kit shortages. Maryland's Republican governor says that without enough tests, he's left flying blind, having to guess about where the outbreaks are in his state. Lester?
I just talked to a healthcare worker today over in Trenton while pumping some gas. And he believes that there has been 6 known cases over in Gibson County alone. And that was as of last night, whenever he went to bed, because a couple of them come through that clinic up there in Trenton that had gotten diagnosed towards having the corona disease. So it ain't a matter of the people around here waiting for it to get here. It's already here. That means whenever you walk outside and you get around people, you could become exposed. First thing I done whenever I was pumping my gas, I took a rag and some windshield washing fluid, and I cleaned the handle the best that I could. Then I went and got some gloves after I already had my mask on, and I put my gloves on just to be able to pump the gas. Because the person in front of me that was pumping gas could have very well had an infected hand. That's how bad this is getting. And you may be saying, well, Dennis, I thought you was a man of faith. I am a man of faith. I do believe that God's going to protect me. But I'm not going to purposely go out here and ask for it. And if I know that there's danger lurking in the weeds, I'm going to try to stay away from the weeds. If I know that there's possibly danger on that gas handle that I'm fixing to pull from the machine just to pump gas into my automobile, I'm going to do everything that I can to take a prevention from getting it on my hand, not knowing if my hand is going to accidentally rub against my eye or my nose or my mouth. Because believe it or not, people subconsciously touch their ears, touch their hair, touch their forehead, touch their head, probably more so than any other part of your body. For some reason, you get a little scratch, you want to scratch it. You feel something that feels like a little hair or something that all of a sudden falls on your cheek. You want to, get it off. You're constantly jittering and fidgeting with things. Especially those who have ever been a smoker back years ago. That's one of the reasons why I think it's so hard to quit smoking, is because you got to be doing something with your fingers, with your hands. And if you're not doing something with your hands, like a smoker does, it becomes very, very difficult to quit smoking. I don't think it's the chemical effect. I think it's the psychological effect. You've gotten so used to doing something with your fingers and your hands, now you feel like that you have to be doing something with your fingers and your hands. If the truth be known, if you walked around with an ink pen in your finger, in your hand, every time you woke up, people that are trying to quit smoking, and just take that pencil or take that ink pen and roll it around, be doing something with your fingers, be doing something with your hand, you could probably quit smoking 2 to 1 as easy and as quick as you would be if you didn't use that technique. It's got something to do with the training of the mind. You've already trained your mind to fiddle and mess around with your fingers and your hands, and now you no longer have nothing to fiddle around with your fingers and your hands, and because of it, it makes it twice as hard to quit smoking. I think it's more of a psychological thing than it is a chemical thing. I'm not saying that it's not a chemical thing, because it is a chemical thing, but it's not as much of a chemical thing as a lot of people would like to teach you that it is. It's as much of a psychological thing as it is a chemical thing. To some degree. To some extent.
Often depend on those Amazon deliveries as well. So how can you avoid bringing the virus into your home on shopping bags and packages where it may be lingering? Here's Tom Costello.
From a market in New York City.
Well, right now we've given masks and gloves to all our employees, over 150 employees.
To a grocery store in Seattle.
When we walked up to the store, they greeted you and they're wiping off your hand cart.
A priority on wiping the virus from shopping carts to the checkout counter. To limit trips to the store, health professionals recommend buying 2 weeks of groceries at a time. But what do you do when you get home?
When you go out to get your groceries and you bring them home, try not to bring them into your house unless you absolutely need them.
Michigan Dr. Jeffrey Van Wingen took his advice online in a video that's gotten wide play. The CDC now says the virus can remain airborne for 2 to 3 hours. It can remain on cardboard for 24 hours and plastic and stainless steel for 2 to 3 days. The advice? Leave non-perishables outside for several days. When you bring groceries inside, divide your countertops into sterile and non-sterile sides. Then wipe everything off with a disinfectant, from the plastic bags to milk jugs to canned goods.
Because I know that human hands have touched this medication bottle in less than 72 hours, I'm going to wipe that down I'm going to place it on the clean side.
Consider putting chips and bread into airtight plastic. Wash fruits and vegetables in cold water. If you bring home takeout food, remove it from packaging and consider microwaving it, which should kill the virus.
I think now is the time to choose more hot goods over cold goods.
If you get a package delivery, experts say leave it in the garage or outside for 24 hours and then wipe it down. They say it's unlikely the virus would survive inside the box. Some people now using a UV light box to sanitize.
I put my cell phone in, my sunglasses, any card or cash that I've used while I'm out.
Meanwhile, health experts urge Americans to get out and exercise, but keep 6 feet distance from others.
You see somebody within 2 feet, hey, Jack, back up. And that's what's going to win this thing.
Tonight, rewriting the rules of social norms and family hygiene. Tom Costello, NBC News, Bethesda, Maryland.
And it was a tough day for millions of Americans as monthly bills came due. Our Stephanie Rule now with ways to help.
More than half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
I need that money, I have bills to pay.
But for so many, those paychecks have stopped.
If you don't have your job, how they expect you to pay it?
44 million Americans work in retail, where many companies are furloughing employees.
I'm very scared that they're not going to give me my job back.
Experts say retailers already fighting an uphill battle against e-commerce, along with other industries that rely on people showing up or being in crowded spaces, won't just bounce back.
People are still going to be afraid to go out.
Restaurateur Tom Colicchio says without the help of landlords and payment leniency, it's going to be tough for many restaurants to survive, especially if they have to rework their space to make people feel safer.
I think we're going to see medium-sized restaurants groups, maybe also make a decision not to open up because the economics just don't work. And I think the mom and pop is going to struggle too.
Small business owners looking for help can apply for low-interest loans, which can be entirely forgiven if they keep all employees on payroll. To apply, call your bank or a bank you've done business with in the past. And there are actually companies hiring given the recent shift in customer demands. But as millions wait for government relief money and states scramble to keep up with the unprecedented surge of unemployment claims, bills are still due. So call your lender about payment programs and ask for help if you need it.
A lot of tenants worried, crying, complaining they can't pay.
New York landlord Mario Salerno waived this month's rent for his 200 tenants.
I says, don't worry about paying me. Worry about your neighbor. Worry about your family.
And as you navigate bills, remember, automatic payments for federal student loans are suspended through September without interest. And there's no required withdrawal from retirement accounts this year. So if investments lost value and you don't need the money, you can let it sit and hope it recovers. Lester, many relief programs are not automatic, but they are available. So if you need help, ask for it. And if you can give help, please give it.
Well, I can't believe it, that guy. He was probably charging at least $1,000 a month, 200 tenants. That's $200,000 that he sacrificed for a month of his business. That is a heck of a sacrifice. And he's liable to have to do that again. I don't know. God Almighty. Heaven help us. Heaven help us.
Lester?
Some helpful tips there, Stephanie. Thank you. Up next, the joyful reunion you have to see. All right, welcome back. We want to show you a moment today that has touched so many people here at NBC News. The reunion after 49 days apart between our correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer and her son. Janice has been on the front lines of covering the coronavirus crisis in China and Japan and the UK. Now back in China, and after a 14-day self-quarantine, she is back with her family, and we want to thank her, and thanks to all of our correspondents and producers and crews who are working so hard away from their families to bring this global story to you and your families. To Janice, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It was a special moment.
Absolutely. Good luck to all of us as we struggle in this period of time that we're going to have to reinvent and search towards who we truly are and what we have become versus what we want to be. Good luck to all of us as we go through these trying times that are going to be pressing not only upon ourselves but upon our children. Of the future for tomorrow. Heaven help us. Heaven be with us all. Shalom.